there are people endowed with an amazing ability to remain calm, as if possessing a secret inaccessible to most. While fate tests them, the surrounding world plunges into chaos, and a series of failures relentlessly pursues them. They remain unperturbed, as if the storm bypasses them. What allows them to maintain such composure? Most people live life constantly reacting to external stimuli. A careless driver cuts them off on the road, and anger flares up. A colleague makes a cutting remark, and the mood instantly spoils. A stranger's casual glance, and self-doubt arises. But what if there was a way to break free from this dependence? What if no one and nothing could disturb inner peace? As Carl Jung once noted, many people are hostages of their own reactions. They are convinced that the world affects them, while in reality they only reflect what they have yet to realize and accept in themselves. This contains a profound truth that can change one's outlook on life. But how can one learn to control their reactions and find long-awaited equanimity? The answer to this question may be the key to a happier and more harmonious life. The truth is that external influences are not capable of causing harm if there is no susceptibility to them in the depths of a person's soul. An insult hurts only when there is a fear of its truthfulness lurking in the subconscious. The indifference of others wounds those who still need confirmation of their own importance. That is why the same events evoke such different reactions in different people. It is not what happens around that matters, but what happens inside a person. This phenomenon is often called shadow work, the process of becoming aware of hidden aspects of personality. Every irritation, every disappointment, every emotional trigger serves as a signal from the inner world. Many prefer to avoid these signals, suppressing them or blaming external circumstances. However, those who strive for awakening come to a deep understanding. The external world only reflects the internal state of a person. Awareness of this fact opens access to an incredible ability to shape one's own reality through self-management. However, the main problem lies in the unwillingness of most people to accept this truth. It is much more convenient to believe that the source of suffering is a despotic boss, unsuccessful relationships, unfavorable circumstances, or simple bad luck. It is easier to blame everything on the injustice of fate than to admit one's own responsibility for what is happening and understand that a person themselves gives their power to external factors. Nevertheless, for those who have enough courage to look deep inside themselves, to abandon accusations and begin to observe their reactions, a completely new level of freedom opens up. The most valuable thing here is that by ceasing to react, a person comes out from under someone else's control. There is no longer any need to avoid communication with unpleasant people or try to manipulate the surrounding reality. A person becomes impervious to external influences, but not detached, but unshakable. They do not turn into someone insensitive, but become untouchable to negativity. This is the dilemma, the illusion of control versus the freedom of letting go. Many people spend their lives in fruitless attempts to control what is beyond their control. They crave universal love, predictability, and want everything to go according to their script. And when reality does not meet their expectations, they experience suffering, anger, and disappointment, taking everything personally, as if the universe itself has turned against them. But the truth is this: in this world, a person has almost no control over anything, except for one thing, their own perception. It is perception that determines the reaction to what is happening, and therefore the degree of susceptibility to suffering. Carl Jung, a perceptive mind of his time, grasped a truth that eludes many. The world around us is neutral in its essence. It is not colored in tones of good or evil. It is not an embodiment of mercy or cruelty. It simply exists. The illusion of its apparent changeability is born from the prism of our perception, through which we look at the world. Consider this example. Two people face an identical situation, whether it be a painful breakup, a financial collapse, or a failure in an important matter. One plunges into the abyss of despair, seeing in what is happening the collapse of all hopes. The other, on the contrary, perceives it as a valuable lesson, an opportunity for personal growth, a harbinger of new, more favorable prospects. The key difference lies in their perception. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The depth of this thought is simple yet striking. Until a person becomes aware of the subconscious scripts they project onto others, onto the concept of success, love, and their own worth, they are doomed to automatic unconscious reactions. They will naively believe that life is something that happens to them, not realizing that to a large extent it is shaped by themselves. And here begins the most interesting part. The more desperately a person tries to control the external world, the more power they give it over their internal state. The very moment an acute need for someone's respect arises, that someone gains leverage over that person. As soon as there is an obsessive desire for a situation to unfold according to a certain scenario, it begins to dominate them, and when a person demands that life be fair, they are preparing themselves for inevitable disappointment. Abandoning the obsessive idea of controlling everything opens the door to genuine freedom. A person is freed from the shackles of the need for approval, the paralyzing fear of failure, and the exhausting tension that arises when trying to fit a turbulent life into the rigid framework of an idealized image. Truly invulnerable people in this world are not those who manipulate circumstances, but those who have achieved mastery over themselves. They are a model of composure in raging chaos, unwavering resilience in the face of uncertainty, indifference to the opinions of others, and fearlessness in the face of the future. They have grasped the secret that eludes most. Control is just a chimera. True power lies in the ability to accept the inevitable. Paradoxically, it is at the moment of abandoning the desire to control everything that true power comes. When the desperate need for everything to go according to plan disappears, events often begin to unfold in the best possible way. Having stopped fearing the condemnation of others, a person gains unwavering self-confidence. Having stopped chasing success out of a sense of inner inferiority, they discover that opportunities themselves float into their hands. Having stopped resisting the flow of life and starting to move in unison with it, a person notices that everything begins to fall into place with almost no effort on their part. This is not just speculation, but a scientifically proven fact, confirmed by neurobiology. Research in the field of cognitive psychology convincingly demonstrates that excessive attempts to establish strict control over the surrounding world, whether in relation to other people, expected results, or even one's own thoughts, inevitably generate powerful resistance. That is why people who have an acute need for love and attention often unwittingly push them away. Fear of possible failure often leads to self-destructive behavior, and those who desperately cling to the illusion of control ultimately feel the most helpless and vulnerable. Therefore, it is worth asking yourself, in what mode are you living your life, reactive or active? Are you the true master of your perception and inner world? As soon as the realization comes that external factors do not have real power over your internal state, life is transformed, turning into a completely different game. It is about achieving a state of untouchable mind when nothing can unbalance you. Imagine such a situation. You are calmly walking down the street, immersed in your thoughts, and suddenly someone throws an offensive remark in your face. Perhaps you are called stupid, worthless, or predicted a complete lack of prospects in the future. Stop for a moment and analyze what is actually happening inside you at this moment. Most people instantly take a defensive position or experience a feeling of deep resentment. Emotions overwhelm them even before they have time to realize what is happening. The heart begins to beat wildly. Anger flares up like a match. The mind continuously reproduces the insult like a broken record, only adding fuel to the fire of disappointment and irritation. However, one can imagine a completely different picture, a complete absence of any reaction. No violent emotions, no internal tension, only a calm, deep awareness, suggesting that what is happening has nothing to do with the person. This is the essence of the teachings of the Stoics, the life philosophy of Zen masters, and the deep understanding of Carl Jung. Nothing from the outside is able to disturb a person's inner peace, lest they allow it. But let's consider this question even deeper. Why are most people so susceptible to external influences? The reason lies in their unconscious identification with a false self, a fragile personality built on the basis of other people's opinions, the need for constant confirmation, and a rigid attachment to a certain order of things. Therefore, when someone challenges this artificial construct, it's perceived as a personal attack. It's no longer just an insult, but a direct threat to the story a person tells themselves about their own identity. Jung called this the shadow self, the hidden area of the human psyche where fears, insecurities, and unresolved emotional torments are safely hidden. And when someone tries to provoke a person, they are not inflicting new pain, but merely exposing old pain, showing a wound that has long existed. It's worth considering. If a person were truly in harmony with themselves, someone's insult would have no meaning for them. It simply wouldn't affect them, wouldn't leave a mark. It would pass by like wind through an open window. It would be like a shout in the mountains, just an echo, unable to shake their unwavering greatness. In essence, the main question is, what makes a person react to external stimuli? When someone throws an offensive word in their face, does it hurt their ego because deep down they fear there's some truth to it? If someone shows disrespect, does a wave of anger arise because the person is still seeking approval from others? If circumstances don't turn out as planned, does disappointment set in because they are too attached to a specific outcome? The problem lies not in the external world, but in how a person perceives themselves and their place in it. True strength lies not in silencing critics, avoiding unpleasant situations, or eliminating all obstacles in one's path. It lies in developing an unwavering mind that doesn't need external validation, that won't break under the burden of pressure, and that fully realizes a simple truth. Control over one's life begins and ends with perception. This is not just a beautiful philosophical idea, but a principle backed by scientific research in the field of psychology. Scientists argue that emotional reactivity is an acquired habit, like many other behaviors. The brain forms and strengthens neural connections based on repeated reactions to external stimuli. The more often a person allows the external world to define their emotions, the more automatic and uncontrollable this reaction becomes. However, the most inspiring discovery is a person's ability to self-improvement through retraining their own brain. Modern neurobiologists convincingly demonstrate that through practices of mindfulness, cognitive restructuring, and deliberate confrontation with discomfort, an individual can literally reprogram their emotional reactions. Over time, verbal attacks lose their sharpness and cease to cause pain. Failures no longer have the power to define identity. The unknown ceases to evoke fear and anxiety. At this turning point, a person ceases to be a puppet in the hands of circumstances and gains control over their own life. A state of invulnerability ensues, but not because of changes in the external world, but thanks to internal transformation. In human nature lies an amazing feature. We tend to believe that our reactions are caused by external factors, while in reality, we are always reacting to ourselves. Imagine a situation. Someone inflicts an insult, and their words wound like a dagger. But it's worth stopping and thinking, where exactly is this pain felt? It lies not in the words themselves, but in the meaning that is attached to them. The pain comes from old, unhealed wounds that these words touched, from stories deeply buried in the subconscious, from those aspects of personality that have not yet achieved integrity and harmony. A deep connoisseur of the human soul, Carl Jung, once insightfully remarked that precisely what irritates us when interacting with others can become the key to self-knowledge. This truth, often uncomfortable and avoided by many, is that nothing from the outside has power over us until we ourselves give it power. It's worth looking at this from the point of view of a mirror metaphor. If the reflection in the mirror suddenly frowned, would we blame the mirror? Rather, we would realize that the reason for the dissatisfaction lies in our own facial expressions. However, when life reflects our inner experiences, when those around us provoke us, and circumstances cause a storm of emotions, We tend to react as if the problem lies in the external world. We point the finger at others, demand change, missing the deep realization. The external world only reflects what already exists within us. In this regard, a logical question arises: why do we give external factors such enormous power over us? The answer lies in our attachment. When our sense of self is inextricably linked to external attributes, the opinions of others, the pursuit of approval and striving for specific outcomes, we become prisoners of these factors. We find ourselves at the mercy of others' judgments, circumstances and failures. But what if we were to abandon the familiar role of a perpetual participant in events and instead adopt the position of an outside observer? Detachment is not a path to emotional coldness, but rather the attainment of inner steadfastness and the realization that one's personality is not limited to fleeting emotions. A person is the observing consciousness behind them. Imagine a raging thunderstorm, claps of thunder, howling wind and blinding flashes of lightning. Yet above this elemental fury, serene and calm, stretches the expanse of the sky. Similarly, a person is not the storm itself but the sky above it. And therein lies a profound truth. True strength lies not in controlling the external world, but in mastering one's perception. As soon as a person ceases to react automatically, they begin to reclaim control over their reality. Those around them sense this change. They lose the ability to provoke them, draw them into their chaos, and disrupt their inner peace. Now, they are the master of their own energy. In this context, a natural question arises: how does one enter this state of imperturbable presence? The answer lies in a fundamental shift in consciousness, in recognizing that one has never reacted to the world as it is, but only to its interpretation, created by one's own mind. To illustrate this point, consider a simple example. Two people find themselves in an identical situation. They are accidentally bumped into on the street. One shrugs it off and continues on their way, not giving it a second thought. The other, on the other hand, dwells on the incident, feeling anger and resentment for hours. The event is the same, but the reactions are completely different. Why? Because the reaction is not determined by the event itself, but by its interpretation in the person's mind. Carl Jung, a prominent researcher of the human psyche, repeatedly emphasized the existence of the shadow self, hidden corners of our consciousness where suppressed desires, unresolved traumas, repressed feelings and fears lie dormant, which we vainly attempt to ignore. However, it is these hidden forces, paradoxically, that have a decisive influence on our lives, shaping our reactions and actions. Why do certain words or situations trigger a painful response in us? Why do some people easily throw us off balance? The answer lies in the fact that they touch upon aspects of our personality that we have not yet recognized and accepted. If someone's actions or words easily manipulate our emotions, it is not a testament to the manipulator's omnipotence, but to the presence of internal conflicts and unresolved issues that they inadvertently expose. Genuine invulnerability and emotional resilience are not achieved by suppressing feelings, but through a courageous confrontation with them. It is necessary to learn to observe one's emotional triggers, not avoid them. It is important to shift the focus of attention from the question, "Why did they treat me this way?" to the question, "What within me causes such a reaction?" Imagine a chessboard. Most people live their lives like pawns, mindlessly reacting to every move of the opponent, becoming hostages of circumstances. However, true mastery lies in becoming a player who can see the entire board, anticipate the development of events, and maintain composure and coolness in any situation. Moreover, the true master becomes an observer, contemplating the game from the sidelines, noticing the slightest patterns and trends even before they manifest. This is the essence of emotional detachment, not in insensitivity and suppression of emotions, but in awareness and understanding. A deep understanding of one's feelings allows one to break free from their power, to cease being a puppet of one's own reactions, and to gain control over one's mind. Emotional detachment is not an escape from emotions, but the attainment of a level of understanding where they lose their ability to control us. The paradoxical truth is that as soon as a person stops impulsively reacting to external stimuli, the surrounding world begins to change in its attitude towards them. The people around them notice the changes that have occurred in their behavior. The individual no longer strives desperately to gain approval and confirmation of their actions. On the contrary, others begin to seek their recognition. When a person ceases to fuel negative emotions with their reaction, they lose their power over them. They cease to be a puppet in the hands of circumstances and become someone who controls the situation. The key to such changes lies in mindfulness in every moment of time. A person constantly faces a choice to react automatically to what is happening or to consciously observe the situation. Next time someone tries to provoke you, pause and catch that split second before you immediately react. Feel the wave of emotion rising, but instead of being consumed by it, observe it from a distance, like a scientist studying an experiment, with curiosity, calm, and detachment. It is in this moment of stillness and focus that true power lies. The question then becomes, how do you develop this awareness to the point of it being automatic? This is the question that will be addressed further. For it is when a person stops allowing the world to pull their strings that they regain control of their life, master their reactions, and become the master of their own reality.